There we go. Now we can hear you.
Terrific. Hello, everyone. Good to see you.
Aloha. So I'll give John a quick intro here. John is John. How long have we been working with you? A couple of years.
How about coming up to 9 years, I think.
Are we your oldest client? You know, I'm 51.
Hey, that's a good age.
So John, we met John at a rate mastermind. Rate is the radio and television experts. We meet once a year, do mastermind, blah, blah, blah. We share great ideas. And John was the presenter, and his deal was really helping people, kind of like, you know, you'll hear him called like a headhunter. If you look in his back shelf there, he has actually tiny shrunken heads on a shelf because he's a modern day headhunter. But he basically, if you guys, you know, when you guys applied to the team, and that thing you fill out, the disc profile, that's from John. John actually reviews it and gives you, he's like a Caesar in the stands at the Coliseum. John goes like literally you put it in that corner, probably that corner would be good. Yep, you good? You don't want to order it. Yeah, so John literally goes in, like, we're the gladiators in the arena, and we look up at John, and John is like Caesar, and he goes like this or like that. But sometimes they go like that. And then when he goes like sideways, that means he gives us more questions we gotta ask. But typically it's like this or like this. Is that a good intro?
I love that analogy, man. I've never heard that done before. I like that. I'm gonna reuse that one.
But John's one of our gatekeepers in our hiring process, so now you know John.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Thanks, John.
Tell the team about your, like, how long you've been doing this and where your background and all that stuff.
So my first position actually out of college was working in the staffing or recruiting kind of headhunting business, as Attilio accurately called it. And, you know, that experience was pretty interesting. I found out really quickly that there's absolutely no ethics in the industry whatsoever. Most of the time, people that are placing salespeople or different positions into the company are also taking people from the backside at the very same company. You got guys crawling over each other, and girls crawling over each other for candidates. I mean, it was just a mess. So anyway, the recruiting business has been around for, you know, 100 years or so, and there's really been very little in terms of changes that have taken place in that time. So basically, I use a very comprehensive assessment that you all have completed, and it goes into a lot of depth, more than just personality. That's the least important part of the equation. The most important part is, what is the person motivated by, or what is it that fulfills them? What is it that energizes them? You know, why they do what they do, which is the values. And then the third piece is their innate talent. You can't teach talent. You can teach someone some skills, but you really can't teach talent. And the reason why the third profile is such a game changer, it actually measures the hardwiring of your brain. What you see clearly, not very clearly at all, or kind of, you know, with cable reception versus high definition. So I guess today, Attilio, just to kind of bring some context to our session, you want to talk a little bit about the DISC profile, communication styles, how to best connect, you know, and build a trust and rapport quickly and easily, how to be more successful in sales. Can you kind of just give me a little bit of context there? So, and before we do, I've probably helped train, coach, and hire a couple million salespeople over the last 3 decades, conservatively. I work for 2 very, very good sales training companies. One of them was trusted by 85% of the Fortune 500. I've got a lot of background in leadership training and development. So really, performance is my area of expertise, and specifically the art and science of selling.
Yeah, John, you hit it on the nail on the head in that you're our guru expert for the DISC profile. So the same thing that you're looking at for candidates to screen them out of joining our team is, you know, there's a screening process, but on the sales side, it's what we need help with is, one, really understanding how to identify that DISC profile, and then help us with the mirroring and matching to get that rapport going with them.
Okay. So from that, would it be helpful to kind of spend a little bit of time from an education point of view, the D, the I, the S, and the C, and some things that would be helpful to recognize? Okay, let's go there then. So I'm going to give you one word for each quadrant or each dimension. So the guy that created the profile said this: every human being demonstrates characteristics of all 4 dimensions, but here's the key, with varying degrees of intensity. So the higher the score in one specific area, the more likely we are to experience you, right, with behavioral or personality characteristics in that specific style. So for example, I don't know if anybody has their DISC profile handy, but for those of you that are a high D, that stands for dominance or decisiveness, okay? Now, the one word to best describe the D is direct. They typically are the person in charge. There you go, outstanding. So Adrian is a pure D, mint chocolate chip, I like that. I'm also a 99D, right? So how you speak to Adrian and to Attilio is be good, be quick, and be gone. In other words, be good means demonstrate your professionalism. Tell them what time it is, not how to build the watch, because they're very strategic thinkers. They have a lot on their plate. They tend to be very impatient. They're already thinking while they're talking to you what they have to do next. And then be gone. Finish up quickly, bring it to closure, and then move on to the next thing. Okay? If you do not do that, a D can typically be very abrupt and impatient. They will either dismiss you or just move on to something else. Okay? So the high D is concerned about results and about basically the bottom line and about ego. How will this help me be better? How will this help me become more productive, more profitable? So if you're looking at a high D, you're saying, you know, can you see yourself living in this home because it's only a 10-minute drive from your corporate office, which is going to maximize the amount of time that you're going to be able to be at work and be thinking about things at work. Or so, you know, that would be like an application. But you would never say that, you know, to a high C, because that's not going to hit, that's not going to resonate with them. Okay. So the one best word to describe the D is direct. They like to be in charge. They like to be the one that's directing others. And they want to be spoken to in a very direct manner. Okay. Now, the single best way to determine a high D is energy level. How quickly do they walk? How quickly do they talk? Right? The negative downside of a high D is they can interrupt, right? They can be very abrupt and very direct in terms of the comments that they make, both good or bad. So you can observe a high D from either a positive standpoint or from a negative standpoint. If somebody is a senior executive, that's also a dead giveaway that they're most likely going to be a high D. So if you know what the person is before you know, if you've done a little bit of research or you're talking to somebody while you're talking to them on the phone, you Google them online, you find out that they're a senior vice president of sales, you can be about 99% sure that person is a high D. Why? Because high Ds typically are either entrepreneurs or they're executives that rise up through the company quite quickly because they have such a high sense of urgency, determination, competitiveness, drive, etc. Okay? So if they have high energy, then they're typically going to be a D or an I. Okay? If they're more subdued, more withdrawn, the energy is quite a bit lower, those are your S's and your C's. Okay? The one best word to describe the I is relate. Relate. These are your people persons. These are your extroverted folks. Woo, there you go. So interestingly, I am a blend of both Adrian and Attilio. I'm a 99D and a 99I. I'm a pure D and a pure I. Okay? So you're going to probably see and hear Attilio is going to be probably more expressive and outgoing than Adrian. Right? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so the extrovert is pretty simple. You know, charismatic, charming, never met a stranger, outgoing, friendly. They still have a lot of warmth, okay? So you want to be selectively asking extroverted people open-ended questions, but you've got to rein them in as well. Otherwise, you could be there forever. Okay? The S, the one best word to describe the S is accommodate. These are typically your people that work in administration, right? Operations, human resources. They are the type of people that like security and predictability above all else. They do not like change. Administrative people typically take the longest amount of time to come around to new ideas, to new concepts. They absolutely hate it when Adrian and Attilio go to conferences because they come back jammed with all this great new information and new ideas, and they're going to do things a new way. And they're like, oh no, I can't, what are we going to be faced with, right? The sky is falling type of thing, but they just need a little bit more time. So the single best question to ask a high S, and incidentally, the high D represents only 10% of the world's population. The high S is 50%. 1 out of every 2 people in this world are a high S. So if you ask the following question, you have a 50% chance of hitting the strike zone. What is it about your previous home that you can't see yourself living out that you absolutely must have with your new home? Why? Because they like predictability, security, routine. They don't like a whole lot of change. That's the S. The C, the one best word to describe the C is assess. Assess. Another good word is analytical. They assess things like data, facts, evidence mean everything to them, and they also assess people. Here's the thing that we don't really take into consideration from a sales dialogue point of view. We as the salespeople only have a certain amount of time. Our ability and our performance is going to be directly linked to how we manage our time, which has to do with how we qualify our opportunities. So if I have 15 opportunities, I want to know who are my top 5. Who are my people that have the ability and the authority to make a decision? They're credit approved. Who are the people that have some type of a compelling event? Maybe it's urgency. Maybe they're visiting for just a week and they want to make a purchase and then they're flying back out because it's a second home. All these types of things. I want to know who's on my short list that I'm going to focus most of my time, attention, and resources toward because it's the highest probability that I have to close. On the flip side, who are the people that are maybe the bottom 5 that aren't ready now, but people that I still have to connect with periodically, and it's in my day timer. I strategically have touch points, so I want to make sure that I keep in touch with those people at appropriate times, but they're not on the front, they're not the top 5, they're not on the front burner. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Good. Now, the concept that I was about to introduce is while we are qualifying the buyers, they are actually qualifying us. That's something you have to keep in mind when you have any type of conversation, especially on the very front end in terms of the first impression. You know the image or person that comes to mind when you first hear the word sales? Almost all of the time is a used car salesperson. They're expecting the worst. So when you amaze them with how you engage and the types of questions that you ask, you differentiate yourself, you set yourself apart from the other 80% hackers who do us a disservice, but actually, come to think of it, having an abundance mindset, I'm actually thankful that so many people in sales are horrible, because why? It's easy for us to differentiate ourselves, right? And to set the high watermark. So while you're qualifying the buyer, they're qualifying us. What they are looking for is the quality of their experience. So I just finished a little bit of a road trip teaching how to push the buy button in the brain. We went over the D, the I, the S, and the C. We know from research there is a literal, not a figurative buy button in the brain. You can accelerate decisions in your favor by how much contrast you demonstrate. So here's the concept. It's very subtle, but it's incredibly important. There's a book that I have that I'm just reading downstairs. It's called The Story Brand. And on page 9, it talks about neuroscience and the fact that if we confuse buyers or our potential clients, or if we are talking too much, that what happens, the brain goes into a protection mechanism because it's starting to burn too many calories because we're making them think and analyze too much. And so they start to shut us out. Imagine that. Imagine a buyer that basically they don't even realize it, but they're starting to tune us out because we're talking too much or we're saying things that are irrelevant. Wow. On the flip side, if you're very clear and you're adding value in what you're saying, they're not analyzing or thinking, they're deciding. Wow, this person understands me. This person gets me. This person really is talking my language. Everybody understand where I'm going with this?
Yes. Yes.
Subtle, but very important. Okay. So here's another concept, a couple of other things that do the sales and our industry a tremendous disservice. You've always heard the ABCs of selling. Always be what?
Closing.
It's terrible. Throw it out. It's manipulative. It's used car sales lot stuff. Always be connecting is the ABC of selling. Always be trying to improve the emotional connection, the trust and rapport that you have with your client by what? By speaking to them in their language. Anybody ever see the movie Tommy Boy?
Yeah.
You remember that one clip when he says, little fella, you're not speaking my language, right? Because he was talking about the Goodrich strobe and fade and all this technical, techno-weenie geek speak. And the guy was not technical. And then Tommy Boy says, what my associate's trying to say is our brake pads are really cool. And that didn't hit the mark either. He starts to do a demonstration. He lights the cars on fire and he gets thrown out, right?
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to be in alignment with our buyer each and every time. Now, let me tell you something. The least favorite person to sell to or to list a property for is a high C. Why? Because they're slow to make decisions. They want all the facts, all the data, all the information, and that is contrary to a good salesperson's nature. So either you refer the business to somebody else who is okay with dealing with high C's, getting back to time management again, or you take it, but you communicate and engage them in a way that they want to be spoken to, both verbally and in writing. In other words, you have to kill a couple of trees. You have to give them all the information. Do you know if you were dealing with an engineer and you did some fact finding, you did some, questioning on the front end, you find out, under what circumstances he's going to buy, what the top 5 things he's looking for in a home and all those kind of things. And then when you show up for the first time, you say something like this: knowing how important information is and data is and having all of the facts and the evidence, here's 150 pages of information for you to peruse on the top 4 properties according to what we have, what you have articulated is the most important to you. That person will think you walk on water. But do you know how many times that actually happens? Virtually never. Okay. All right. So the ABCs of selling is not always be closing, right? Here's something that's a pretty amazing quote from Jeffrey Gitomer. Not being able to close is not a problem, it's a symptom. Wow. Let that sink in for a second. Not being able to close is not a problem, it's a symptom. It's an indication that you have done something prior to the close, which should be like a natural progression, that you're out of sync, you're out of alignment. Okay? Another ABC of selling could be also always be consulting. Always be connecting. That's the relationship piece, and always be consulting. Maya Angelou said this, people don't remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them what?
Feel.
It's all about emotion, everyone. And that's why matching and mirroring the style of the buyer is absolutely critical. Because people make decisions based on emotion most of the time. Okay? And what their experience is like. Okay? So for the D, it's direct, For the I, it's relate. For the S, it's accommodate. For the C, it's assess. Okay? So think about their career, their position, their role within a company. Pay very close attention to things like how they're dressed, the type of car they drive, you know, how much energy they have. Those will give you a lot of clues or tips as to what style they are. Okay? So here's another one. Sales is a numbers game. Not true. It's a half truth, right? I'd rather have 5 qualified buyers than 50, right, that are all over the place. So sales is both a numbers game, which is quantity. You have to put in the volume of work, and it's also accuracy. So sales is not merely just a numbers game. It's an accuracy game as well. Accuracy in terms of communicating with them according to how they want to be communicated to. So here's what I know about sales, and after training a couple million people. The vast majority of salespeople operate on what I call automatic pilot. They never shift, they never adjust. They basically push the button, and when that play button takes place, they say the same thing the same way to everyone. That's the car salespeople. The consummate professional salesperson is the one who modifies and adjusts their style, matches and mirrors the style of the buyer. Why? Because that's going to give you the highest probability of success. So accuracy, giving them the right information at the right time. You know, a lot of these people prefer different mechanisms for how to communicate with them. I always ask, do you prefer an email, a text, or a call? I love people that love texts. Because even if they're in a meeting or even if they're on a phone call, they can still text me because they're multitaskers, right? They're just always doing stuff, right? And it's also something that's a lot faster. I don't know if any of you have heard something called the Net Promoter Score. Have any of you heard of something like that? It's a way that companies measure themselves. Forget it. It's old school, passe. You know what the new Net Promoter Score is? Speed. Bless you. Speed. Now, never compromise quality or accuracy for speed. So what I mean by that is if you don't know the answer, you say, look, I've got 15 associates back at the office that have 200 years of combined experience. I'm absolutely going to get the question, the answer to your question. Do you want me to text it to you, email you, or call you with the information? But it's all about being responsive. Put yourself in the buyer's shoes. When you are a buyer, what do you appreciate? So let me talk to you very briefly about the 13 top reasons why buyers buy. 54% of the reason why a buyer buys has to do with specific personal characteristics or attributes of you, the agent. The remaining 46 is actually most influenced by you, the agent. Now, it may be all of the marketing, and it may be the branding, the radio, the television, advertising. I mean, everything that you have going on that brings a prospect to the table. But do you know where the real moment of truth takes place? When you actually have a dialogue and the first conversation with that potential buyer. That's it. Okay? That's where the moment of truth takes place. It's the salesperson that is the most important, hands down. Somebody once said there's 2 challenges to every company, sales and everything else. They couldn't be more correct. Doesn't matter how good your marketing, your infrastructure, your policies, your procedures, your guarantees, nothing. If you don't have a great person that's communicating your value proposition and treating them impeccably. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Yes.
I know I'm going fast and giving you a lot of content, but these are critical principles of success for selling. Comments or questions on anything I've said, because I have said quite a bit, and I want to be able to allow you to digest some of it and get some follow-up.
Yeah, who's got questions in the room? Anybody got any questions on
I
that?
have a comment, kind of. Can I?
Yeah, what's your question?
It's more of a comment. Because one of the things that I use in my presentation, in my consultation with buyers is, you know, we realtors use the same systems, you know, to find you properties. But one of the things that set us apart is, you know, it's well, usually I ask, okay, so Mr. Buyer, do you agree or disagree that information is everything nowadays? And they say yes. So what we do is pretty much, you know, what's important is it's not only just any information, it's the quality information and the speed the information is being delivered at. So that's what we're good at. So that's one of the things I started using, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Terrific. So let me mention something else. 78% of unsolicited is the key word. Small talk is perceived to be negative by the buyer. So sometimes we think that we have to, you know, chat the person up, talk about the weather, all this stuff on the peripheral. 78% of unsolicited, meaning if they go ahead and start to engage us and start talking about, you know, how was your day, you know, what have you, go ahead and engage and ask them back. But don't you be the person that goes ahead and does that, okay? Right from the very beginning, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. And especially if they're a high D, you just want to say something like this: look, I greatly appreciate your time, and I want to be very respectful. So I have a suggestion as to how we can best spend our time together so that we can have the most success. Does that sound okay, Attilio, if he's the buyer?
Yes.
Always ask for permission with a question at the end. Does that sound okay to you? All right, you say, okay, so in other words, in order for us to have for me to have a clear, complete, and mutual understanding of what it is that you're looking for in your next dream home, I'd like to ask you some questions. Is that all right? Boom, it's a perfect segue question into your needs analysis and into your consultation, right? So what are those go-to questions that you have, that you rely on, that just roll off your tongue like you don't even have to think about it? And if you don't have them, you need to have them. And maybe you collaborate with some of your peers and you say, what are the top 10 questions you ask in order to isolate and get really specific about what the person wants? And here's something that's even more important than the what, because the what is really all about data. The why, peeling it back, even going deeper, is the emotional connection to the what. Let me give you an example. You say, what are the top 4 things in your decision criteria about your next home? The man says, unquestionably, it's for my wife. We want an Epicurean kitchen. Well, fantastic. That's great. Okay, so now you know the number one, you want a kitchen that's just tripped out stellar. It's got the best of everything. But you need to ask the question, why is that important to you and also important to your wife? Well, my wife is a gourmet chef in town. She does a lot of entertaining. Man, you are now equipped with something much more emotive and that can connect when you're taking the people through that short list of homes that you have selected. Because I can guarantee you this, less than 5% of salespeople sell that way. Sell to emotion and desires and wants. See, wants and desires are under the surface. Needs are above the surface. So you got to find out the why as well. It could be because they want to be in the best school district. Well, you need to find out why. I just came from a district where it was horrible. We had to bus our kids or drive our kids 45 minutes to a private school. One thing that we are not going to do is sacrifice the quality of our education for our children, even if we have to live somewhere farther away from work. Yeah, is everybody getting this?
Yes. Why is that important?
Here's the thing. People buy for their reasons, not for ours.
Yes.
So that's why the needs evaluation and the consultation on the front end needs to be so crisp and so, precise. Because I know we only have a certain amount of time. The last thing you want to do is spend 3 or 4 weekends with the same couple, right? Driving around looking at all these places. No. You want to get down to, 3 or 4 that really are in the sweet spot, the strike zone of what they have articulated. Why? so that you can accelerate the decision process. So they have a better experience and you have more time to sell your next house. Yes or yes?
Yes. And
Absolutely.
yes, accelerating the experience. So when you show them the home, what's the go-to question that the agent should be using with the client? We're done showing the home. We're in the front yard. What's that go-to question?
Are you ready to put in an offer?
Yeah. No, I'm asking John.
Oh, okay.
What is the go-to question? At what point in the sales process?
We got those homes. Every time we show them a home and we're like in the front yard, we're done viewing the home. That go-to question is,
what is it about this home that you like the most? Would be one of the questions that I would ask.
yeah.
Now, if I'm on the fourth and final home, now because they've seen all four, they now have 4 frames of reference, and I would start asking more specific questions about now. I know we've seen 4 homes and we've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, and sometimes these things start to get a little bit blurred. But based on the 4 homes that we saw today, which home is the front runner for each of you, and why did you select that home as the #1 home? You see, our job is to be a facilitator and a moderator, not a dominator when it comes to sales. And that's the mistake that so many people make, is they overtalk. We want to help them navigate through the process so that it's smooth and that they feel like they're being listened to and that their needs have been identified and understood and are being talked about, right? It may very well be that you, as that moderator, say something like this: well, I'm a little confused why you selected this as your #1 home, given the fact that you said these were your 4 criteria. Have you changed your criteria because of something else that maybe you didn't anticipate or that you didn't articulate or you didn't think about was actually in your top 4, and now it's actually, it's that important to you? See, here's the reality. Most people just want to sell the home and get on to the next one. But what you realize is that that person's circle of influence is massive. They have the keys to your future. The quality of the experience that you give them will be likely shared, right, to other people. You're ensuring your own longevity and your own success when you give people the highest quality experience. Why? Because they're more likely to give you referrals proactively. So this is typically, I've asked a question all over the world. How many times can you basically raise your hand and say, I have had such an exceptional buying experience as a consumer, whether it was a car, a fridge, everything, the whole scope of everything that we buy, that you were almost completely blown away by it. You've kind of felt, you came away thinking, man, that was truly unbelievable. That person really got me. I would pretty much do anything to help that person. How many times in your entire life could you say, has it been 5? I doubt it. Most people, I get maybe like 2% of the people will raise their hand and say they've had more than 5 experiences like that. Your goal is to give them that type of world-class experience. Do not be short-sighted and look at that as just a single transaction. It's a huge mistake. Your fearless leaders are spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually on systems, procedures, right? On marketing, on, everything that they're bringing to the table that helps to differentiate and make it easier for you to sell and to be more compelling than your peers. But at the end of the day, it comes down to personal excellence. So some of those 13 characteristics from the top of my head, how trustworthy are you? How believable are you? How differentiated are you? How much do you instill confidence? How much are you an added value resource? Meaning, as the expert, you need to have an extensive Rolodex of everything from A to Z when it comes to the house. Everybody understand where I'm going with this? It doesn't matter whether it's termite inspection or pest control. It doesn't matter whether it's an HVAC person that you know is one of the best in town, right? Why? Because whoever you recommend is going to be a reflection on you. So I know that you have a lot of go-to resources that you recommend, suppliers, partners that work with you, yes? But you've got to have that information nailed at your fingertips. Oh, you need help here? Boom. Here's the go-to person for that. You need help here? Boom. You're making it so easy for your clients because these are already vetted, trusted people that are good at what they do. Okay? Adding value. It's not just about the home. It's about the totality of everything that goes into it. Okay? Especially important when the buyer may have a concern about a property that needs some type of maintenance or remediation. You basically just say, I've got that covered. We have a person for that. We're going to have somebody come out and take a look at that and give us a quote on what that's going to take and so forth. And you just need to be crisp with all that. Okay. Now, so those are some of the characteristics, personal characteristics: trustworthy, believable, differentiated, instill confidence, added value resource. The things that you influence the most as the salesperson, as the agent, are things like, is the price justifiable? What that really means is it fair? Okay. Does it increase their profitability or productivity? Those are some of the ones that fall into the category of the ones that you influence the most. Okay. So this is your MBA crash course on the DISC program and on sales, the best sales practices in 30 minutes or less to help you guys put rocket fuel in your sales performance. What do you think?
Good stuff. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other kind of comments, questions, observations, remarks, anything at all?
No, I think it's a lot of stuff. What would be your final tip to give people suggestions on how to absorb this information and execute on it?
Okay. So I'm pretty sure you have the 4 or 5 PowerPoint that I have on the DISC profile, don't you? It goes like the characteristics of a high DISC, limitations, those types of things. I would laminate those, put it in a binder, or put it on your tablet or whatever. I would commit that stuff to memory. I would know it inside out and backwards. When I taught this to a company that had an 8-year sales decline, their company sales were cut in half. It was in the middle of the recession. In the first 30 days, they had a 48% increase in growth, and it was on national television. 48% increase in growth. You have at your disposal, that information is the single most important sales information that you'll ever be exposed to. I promise you, hundreds and thousands of people have learned it and have increased their sales substantially. Why? Because it has to do with your ability to quickly and easily recognize the style and identify their buying preferences so that you can connect almost instantaneously and quickly, right, on an emotional level. Now, here's the thing I would also say. Do not compartmentalize this as this is work. That would be a huge mistake. This is about your whole life as a parent, as a daughter, as a son, as a husband, whatever, wife, right? Think about this in the totality of your entire existence. Being the single best person that you can possibly be for your loved ones, for your family, and importantly, your work. But work shouldn't just, you shouldn't just kind of flick a switch and say, okay, now I'm at work. This should be you about being the best person you can possibly be. The person with the most influence, the highest impact, providing the highest experience to people, being a person that's just exceptional. I get it. I really do. Sometimes it's tough. You may have had a fight with your spouse, the morning you have a great, showing that's lined up. Guess what? You got to compartmentalize that, put all that distraction and all that negative emotionality behind you, and you got to turn on the A game because people are counting on you. Your family's counting on you for maybe a second vacation or a nicer car you know, and so are the clients. They're counting on you as well.
Okay, awesome, John. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on here and sharing all this awesome wisdom with